company, and welcome to Show People, the podcast that shines a spotlight on the UK performing arts industry and those dedicated to their craft. Covering the latest news and issues, what to see and do, showcasing theatrical talent, and of course, always trying to inform, educate, and entertain. My name is Andrew Keats. I'm a director and your host. Now, today's guest is both a director and an artistic director, with credits that span the globe to the Old Red Lion, national tours to impressive site-specific productions, where from 2006 to 2013, she was the artistic director of Lightning Ensemble, and since 2013 has been the artistic and executive director of Omnibus Theatre, Clapham. Please welcome Marie McCarthy.
Hello.
Hello. Coming up on today's show, I'll be covering the latest dramatic news. On the platform, we have music from Joe Wilson and Matthew Rankham's new musical, Perfectly Ordinary. And of course, I'll be interviewing the wonderful Marie McCarthy, all about her life, career, and setting her the odd Show People challenge too. You're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats and Marie McCarthy. Welcome to the show, Marie.
Lovely to be here.
Thank you so much for travelling. Tell me just a little bit, for those who don't know about the Omnibus Theatre, Clapham.
Omnibus Theatre is in a converted library.
Yeah.
It was built in 1889 and it's perched on the edge of Clapham Common.
Yeah.
It's a very beautiful red brick building. It has 2 rehearsal spaces. It has a 90-seater theatre that can extend to 110. We have a cafe bar. And 2 theatre cats.
I was just looking at your website. One's called Molly and the other's Tybalt.
That's right, yes.
And I was looking at the website. Apparently they are, all they do is sleep. And I even saw an apologies that they may occasionally get their claws out on your website, which I thought was very, very adorable.
Yes, they are doing a lot of sleeping at the moment in this heat, but they're very friendly.
Yeah.
And yeah, they do get a bit excited sometimes.
And tell me, so obviously it's the library's been converted. How long has the theatre been established for?
So we opened in November 2013 and have been building a programme ever since, and the infrastructure. Obviously, it was a library, and so therefore there wasn't a theatre audience, but now there is, and that's been growing every year. And we'll be 5 in November of this year, 5 years old.
And also, I mean, in 5 years, you're now a multi-award winning theatre.
Yes.
You are developing this wonderful community hub. You remind me a little bit of the Park Theatre in some respects, where you've invested just as much time in getting people to enjoy the building as well as the performance space. But tell me, what's your sort of artistic vision and your artistic mission for that theatre?
I would like it, obviously, to increase in terms of profile, industry recognition. The awards were gear-changing moments with the Peter Brook Award and the recent Offie for Zarafa Giraffa. I want to connect more with regional theatre, get more studio shows in, more touring, developing its identity. So, 5 years, we're still a young organisation, so there's still a lot of development happening. But going forward, what the vision going forward is about a South London theatre that radiates throughout London and beyond, and connects also in terms of the creative learning projects that are happening, that is actually developing an audience that is inclusive and it's accessible, and that's really important.
And tell me, because you have the engine room, which I was really excited about. Can you just let our listeners know the opportunities that are there with the engine room?
Engine Room is a monthly scratch, and we offer 3 days worth of rehearsal space, dramaturgical support from me, and also any kind of support that the artist required. It's really led by the artist. And then after 3 days rehearsal, there's an opportunity to test the work in front of an audience, and we ask them what questions they'd like to ask. Large pieces of paper everywhere, and our audience just scribbles down their responses. And then also the artist can come back to me. We can have another meeting, think about potential development going forward, whether it's something that we can develop as an organisation, and that would sit comfortably in one of the festivals, maybe. Yeah. Or maybe it's really a way of building relationships.
And I noticed that on the website, something that I certainly like, and indeed my production company does, which was maintaining a relationship with artists after you've worked with them, rather than going, oh, we did that show, thanks very much, we'll never see you again. You've had people that you've been nurturing from early stages that have now gone to quite great success, I believe, even within 5 years.
Yes, and that's fantastic when that happens. And I think just the journey of an artist, it just does develop. It's inherent in it. That's what you do. And so therefore to continue that relationship with them ongoing is really great. So I think of Tom Adams, for example. He's our associate artist. He came, he brought 3 shows to us. I really like his work. He's a really interesting theatre maker. Invited him to become an associate artist. He came in and he taught our other associate artists how to play loop pedal, which was just brilliant. And then he came back and he said, I'd really like to make some work for young people. So he developed his show based on his experiences of his stepdad, who was a magician, and he was his magician's helper. Yeah. So this show now, we had it at Omnibus, and then it's been on tour. It's going around the country. And that's really exciting to watch that kind of development. Jemima Foxtrot is another associate artist. She was with us last week doing her piece, which is now she's developing her practice. So from when I first met her, from really a solo artist, really interesting spoken word and a poet, and now looking at interactive work. So this piece of work is going to go on tour around pubs, and now the challenge of interactions and how she facilitates that. And she was testing that out last week, and it's a lovely piece of work. So there are many examples of that kind of relationship, and it's great that they come back home and they have a cup of tea and a chat and hang out. They see the cats. And we've actually got a practitioner in Beijing. We were doing some work out there, and that practitioner came back yesterday and said, coming back, have a cup of tea, see the cats, and they head off. And I love that.
I think you're turning into Clapham's theatrical mum. That's what I think it is. I've knocked the kettle on, the cats are on the windowsill, now tell me about how was school,
The guy who opened the building in 1889, Lord Lubbock, he was the guy who created bank holidays.
Did he?
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of his already.
Yeah. And he had a thing about making the building accessible. Knowledge was accessible, the building was accessible. So I've really taken that spirit, and the doors are open all the time. And so the fact when people come in, they will see an old sofa, they'll see some recycled chairs. The furniture's got a story. The walls have got a story. And you can come in and hang out. You can get your laptop out, do some work. You can just sit there if you want to. You can come and see a show. You can buy a drink. You can just hang out. And I think as an artist, it can be very isolating sometimes, particularly for writers. To have a space where they can come in, say hello, then head off, do their thing, come back. And particularly Engine Room I like very much because it's not so much about an end result. It's about testing work. It's about exploring. And I think that's really nice to be able to provide a space where you don't have a deadline. It doesn't, and I'm really interested in keep practicing the work, the art,
And it does change, doesn't it? Because there are so many producers nowadays who say, I found this idea of a great musical. Go, great, send it to me. They go, right, you've got 3 weeks development and then we're going to put it on here. And you go, what? Okay. Yeah. So what about that year that we spend just playing with it and looking at a document and giving it to an actor and seeing how it develops? We've become so much about the end result rather than, in the same way that an actor will play in rehearsal, a writer should be able to surely do that with their words and thoughts and imaginations and life experiences.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think also it's that pressure that forces a piece of work to be made. Resources, funding, it's hard not to be result driven, but I think we're an independent theatre. We have no core funding.
Do you ever find you get days where you just want to slap the laptop down and walk out and have a scream? And I mean, it must be exhausting after a while.
Yeah, it is exhausting. But also when you see an audience crossing the threshold and you've got a sold out show and you've got maybe someone who hasn't seen theatre before,
Yeah.
or, you're having a conversation about a piece of work and somebody says that actually I now get and I now understand why X, Y, and Z happens.
Yeah.
Because I think that's obviously one of the fantastic things about theatre. That is the engine that keeps you going. That is the thing. And it's really frustrating. There's no doubt about that, but it's also phenomenally rewarding. I think I've never been so satisfied and rewarded in anything I've done. Actually, this is the really stimulating experience, and it's so challenging. It's so hard in equal measures, but it's great to see how things have grown. It's really great. Now, this next season, it's quite a gear change. It's a very full season. It's the fullest it's been. So we open on the 4th. We go right the way through to the 24th of December, show after show after show, with a festival dropped in as well. So it's full on. And that's exciting. So
let's cover, because there is so much that the Omnibus is doing. So first and foremost, for people who want to get involved, so we've covered the engine room. How can people get in contact about that, and also your new writing that doesn't have a title at the moment, but you're hoping to do something similar for writers to try and develop things? If you're a writer, or if you're an actor or a theatre maker that wants to do those early ideas or early playful projects, what do they have to do?
So there is a link on our website, how to get involved, and there are instructions. Just really essentially follow the form. Yeah, input the form, and just tell us a little bit about yourselves. That's the most important thing. What have you done? What are your hopes? What funding, where you expect to get that from, or what entry point do you want? How do you want to grow that relationship with us? Mm-hmm. I go and see a lot of work. A lot of scripts are sent to me. So, for example, with this new writing initiative, and we just piloted it last season, and we will be taking it out again. It's the evening's called Working Title, mm-hmm. And this is really about just testing new work in the same way as we've been testing Engine Room. So, if Engine Room, that's an opportunity for theatre makers. Working Title is for writers. So we provide space for rehearsals. I offer dramaturgical support. And then, like Engine Room, it's an opportunity for audience to feedback. It's development, it's testing work out. And then if it's a 3-week run, depending on where it would sit in the season, send me information, a synopsis, the script, and then I just look and see how it fits into our vision. The work is the work is inspired by the fact the building was a library for 125 years. So it's classics reimagined adaptations. That's the work that we make. So it's that kind of, and also, but it's about contemporary issues. Mm-hmm. We're living in the 21st century. Can't forget that. So it's about shining a light on maybe things hidden in plain sight. Yeah. Almost.
So I imagine for actors, are these things sort of advertised on Spotlight, or should actors get in touch directly?
I have a database, and actors contact me often, and we sometimes come in and chat, or they invite me to see their work. And also when we're casting, so for the work that we're making, we will put a Spotlight breakdown out.
Great.
Yeah, and contact agents and go through those channels. And there generally have been, the 4 productions so far have been Arts Council funded. So,
right. What are you doing to help young producers get on the ladder without having to cost them too much money and lose the thousands of pounds they've just inherited from their nan or they've been putting in a piggy bank?
Well, Engine Room really helps that, that there's no cost involved in Engine Room.
Yeah.
That free space is there. For young producers, I can help with funding applications, give advice around that. Also about how to think out of the box with funding as well. It's difficult. Everyone's after the same pot of money, but depending on the piece of work, if the piece of work's great and there's an angle there and it fits into the artistic vision, then we'll make it work somehow.
Wow. Let's talk about the lucky theatre makers that are working with you at the moment. Tell me about your mammoth season that's taking us all the way up to December.
we start off with Blood Wedding.
Great.
George Richmond Scott has written and directed this new version. And it's inspired by his observations of the Spanish community in South London. So it really is kind of a really interesting piece of work. There's going to be tapas and cava involved, and also a visual arts exhibition. That's going to be really so. And also there's some music, which will be curated by our director of music, which will be on Sunday evenings. We do fantastic jazz and world music on Sunday evenings. So
and I noticed that you only ask for just a donation, don't you? It's sort of like a £5 recommended donation to have an evening of jazz and loveliness.
Well, that's for the lunchtime jazz.
Ah, I see. Sorry.
But the evening jazz is different.
Although I love that you have lunchtime jazz and evening jazz. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, there's not really any venues in Clapham that's got live music.
Yeah.
So that's starting to develop and grow really nicely. So yeah, Blood Wedding is a great big beefy piece of work to kick off the season. Yeah. And then we have the Irish season, which has been inspired by my roots. My both parents were Irish, and so when Lizzie Nunnery approached me, who's a fantastic songwriter, and told me about her connections with the Liverpool Irish Festival, I was really interested in seeing if we could test this out and see if there's enough material for a month's worth of work. Inspired by Irish artists, writers, Irish companies. So she's got this fantastic piece of work called To Have to Shoot Irishmen, which is it's with songs, and it's inspired by the murder of the Irish pacifist Francis Sheehy Skeffington. So it's Easter Rising, 1916, and interwoven with that's folk music. So that's going to be a really beautiful lyrical piece of work. And in dialogue with that, so that will start at 7:00, and in dialogue with that, we have Strange Fish Theatre Company with Owen McCafferty's Quietly. So that's a really interesting kind of dialogue, because that's chiming with the 20th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. So that will be in the bar. So our bar will be
with
converted.
all the mess we're in when it comes to Brexit and Ireland's feelings at the moment. Yeah. Very brilliant programming.
Yeah, I'm pleased with that. And then Boundaries comes in, Don McCampbell, which is a piece of work about trans experience. So,
Bravo, which is not being done with miserably. And will you be working specifically with trans actors on that piece?
I believe he is. Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Because that's the other thing you expect. We believe in trans theatre. Great. But we're just going to play it. Oh, right, that's sort of not the point.
No, exactly. Yeah. So then from there into our Perception Festival, which this will be our 4th year. Perception Festival looks at judgment, essentially. I'm kind of interested in how we judge people, not knowing much about them, and the assumptions we make. So every season we kind of look at an aspect of judgment. And so last season we had Perception Festival was looking at going against the tide, non-conforming, and what happens in that journey. And so now we're looking at isolation and what that means. Chosen, you're choosing to be isolated. You're not
exile, yeah.
Exactly. So all the work in that festival, which runs for a month, looks at different aspects of that. So we have Volcano Theatre's Macbeth, looking at the relationship with him and her, and the isolation within that. And the 3-week headline show running through that is Pit and Pendulum, which is a reimagining of the Edgar Allan Poe's fantastic short story. And that's going to be binaural, with projection mapping. So we're taking the lights out of the theatre, and that's going to be sensory in many different ways. So that'll be really exciting. And Creation is a return visit from Creation. They had this hit last year with Midsummer Night's Dream that went out in the streets of Clapham, which did brilliantly. And then, of course, the fantastic Scott Turnbull will be here. He's an artist from Arc Stockton Arts Centre. He's doing a residency. And we have Fragments of a Complicated Mind and Katie Bonner. So there's lots of really interesting explorations and conversations about this idea of isolation and what does it mean.
Well, the wonderful Diana, who looks after all of your PR, when I received the season brochure through, I think she was quite surprised. When I had the whole season, I responded, I said, yes, I'll be at every press night. She went, that's marvellous. And that's the reason this interview is happening. So I said, look, this programming is wonderful. I said, well, how else can we help? why don't we just get Marie on the show to talk about it in her own words, rather than me constantly chapping in, going, right, another thing you've got to go and see. But I'm really excited to support, and I'm really looking forward to meeting the cats as well.
This is Kumiko Mendel, Artistic Director of Yellow Earth Theatre. You are listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats.
So I didn't realise it. I know you said you have Irish roots, but you're originally from Hackney.
Yes.
So tell me about a little Marie growing up in Hackney.
So my parents came from Kerry and Mayo and came here after the war and ended up in Stoke-Newington. So I was born in Hackney Hospital and grew up there, moved to Stamford Hill, went to a convent school in Stamford Hill, so immersed in the whole Irish Catholic community, and was really interested in Irish work. My family, none of them have got anything to do with theatre whatsoever.
No one's ever does. I've noticed on this show, everyone's parents are either bricklayers or work in advertising, and then we sort of appear like odd gremlins.
Yes. So that's exactly what I did. That was my route. So it was obviously an all-girls school. So importance. I played Ernest in Importance of Being Earnest, and it was at that moment I thought, okay, I like this. Yeah. This is theatre. Okay, so I'm going to check this out. And ended up going to Old Vic Youth Theatre. They had a youth theatre then. And went to drama school and trained as an actor to start off with.
Going back to those early days, it's interesting when I've spoken to people who've had a sort of religious upbringing. I mean, were there moments as a little girl listening to stories and having to do things like the catechism, for example? I mean, if you want a story of fear, asking a little girl to do the catechism at night and thinking of Jesus on the cross before you go to sleep, I mean, that is a quite appalling story to tell young children growing up. Was that difficult as a young girl?
Yeah. Well, you don't know it's difficult because you're part of a community that are all seeing and experiencing the same things. Only when I had friends who weren't Catholics would come home and, come in, dinner or whatever, and they'd go, "Oh, what's that on the wall?" And, notice that there was an image of blood coming out of her head and thorns and things. And I go, it's
Jesus.
Yeah. Why? And so it was all very ordinary. And that was my experience. And it was only when I left school and joined the theatre, ran away to the theatre, when I realised that, okay, this is not everyone's experience. And but I think what was so fantastic about being brought up as a Catholic was the ritual. And the ritual in Mass and ritual in theatre, somehow there were some similarities there, and I think the stories and a lot of those experiences have certainly informed choices since. I'm not a practicing Catholic now.
No. Can you remember the first time you were in a theatre?
Yes, it was South Pacific. It was a musical.
Right. Nothing wrong with a musical.
I loved it, and I couldn't stop thinking about it for weeks and weeks and weeks, because the thing that I realised was that I was completely transported. Yeah. For 2 hours, I was in that space, carried away, and that was really informative. Mm-hmm. It really, really was phenomenal. I came away and I didn't know. I know now I was just completely inspired by this work, and I just thought, this is phenomenal.
How old were you at that point, Marie?
8.
8? And you got to see South Pacific? When you were saying it, it's really hard not to hear Bally High just in the background, isn't it? It's just so infectious. And you said, playing a female Ernest.
Yes.
Actually, why haven't we had that yet? I think we need an all-female production of The Importance of Being Earnest. I love that. And maybe one male. Maybe Lady Bracknell can be the only bloke that's in it.
Well, I had my dad's size 12 shoes on. And they got some kind of suit from somewhere. And it was really funny. Because it was, it was mad and crazy. And it was the first time that there was a play in our school, because it's quite academic and it wasn't, wasn't encouraged. But then we had this phenomenal drama teacher who said, let's do Importance of Being Earnest. And we went, yeah, all right. It was great.
And you mentioned you went to drama school, but if you weren't going to, because you wanted to be an actor originally, that was your original route, and indeed trained as one. If you weren't going to be an actor, what would you have been?
I wanted to be a nun for about 2 weeks.
Right. We've all been through that phase.
I wanted to be a flight attendant.
Right.
And I wanted to be a vet. I think it was in that order. And all of these things lasted for 2 weeks. And then I wanted to, because I just discovered theatre and just this idea of being someone else and, this whole imagination as an escape route was really attractive.
Now, I know you would later do your MA in theatre directing at Birkbeck. What drama school did you go to first and foremost?
I went to Academy of Live and Recorded Arts.
Ah, right, yeah.
Yeah. And
or Hogwarts. It genuinely looks like Hogwarts.
Yes. I was there in the building before that building was there in Wandsworth. It was in a building in East Finchley, and I was there for 2 years, and then after that pursued acting. And I think the thing that got me into immersive theatre was doing a production of Macbeth and Hamlet in a car factory in Oxford, and really having to run across that space in order to make an entrance. And I just thought, this is really interesting. It's a bit like film and theatre meeting somehow, that feels really real. I'm not in the wing space pretending to run. Yeah. I'm actually having to physically run and hit that ground and feel that coldness. And I just thought, as an actor, it just was really interesting to me how that space informed my work and experience.
And tell me, who were the people that were training you that made a real impact? And what was it they said to you that still rings in your ears sometimes when you're in the office or in a rehearsal room?
Well, we had Carol Ziegler and Sorrel Carson, and they were the principals of ALRA at that point. And we had a lot of Stanislavski. So it was really about investigating the truth. What is the truth? All the time, it was coming back to the truth. And that's really stayed with me back in the day when I was a performer, but also as a director. What is the truth of this experience? How can we tease that out? How can we experience that?
How can we live that on stage? Yeah. And why did you go from being an actor to a director, particularly, and if you won't mind me saying, in a time where, with exceptions of people like great Joan Littlewood, etc., where women directors were not necessarily as encouraged as perhaps male counterparts are? What was that like? You must have had a little bit of resistance, and it must have been difficult looking for women director role models as such.
Yes, it was at that time. I think really that the big motivator for that was just that I got to a point with acting, and what does happen is that the roles aren't there. You hit a certain age, and they dry up. They literally dry up. And also, I found that it was not as stimulating as I had experienced it in my earlier parts of my career. I just thought, I'm actually doing this character, seeing the vision of this character from my own perspective. And I found the rehearsal room way more interesting and exciting than being on stage. And that should have given me a clue, really. That was the thing that I found most stimulating. And the minute that we got on stage, it was...
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, and I just thought, oh no, this is what's happening. Because that'd been such a motivator all my life, getting on stage, but suddenly that was becoming less important. And actually, my mum died, and my dad had died some years before, and I just thought, I don't know what. I'm not sure about acting. I got to a point where I just thought, I've just got to rethink things. What do I want to do? What do I really want to keep doing this job? So my partner at the time showed me an advert for Birkbeck, And through my company, Lightning Ensemble, I had inadvertently been directing, just simply because we'd run out of directors. And I reluctantly stepped in to direct and discovered that I secretly loved it. I loved it. I loved this thing about facilitating. And all of the strands and the challenges around that, all the strands of a piece of work and how to communicate that story in the best way possible. And so at that point, I just thought, I'm going to just try for this course. It was in the early days of Birkbeck, and I just thought, well, I'll just see how it goes, and got in. I thought, oh, great, okay.
But you didn't. You didn't just get in. You would end up winning the Sir Peter Cheeseman Award for Achievement. What was the award recognising in particular?
I think it was about application. It was about just my approach to work and the thinking around various projects. It's a really great course, and it's going great guns at the moment, producing fantastic directors. And in those early days of the pilot, which I was part of, it was very practical. So we were looking at the end of every term that we would have an assignment that would be about presenting work. So presenting ideas, communicating, because essentially that's a director.
The gig.
That's the gig. So it was around those ideas and the application of those ideas.
And what would you say to, before we move on to sort of when you started to work professionally, rather quickly actually from finishing, for people who are considering being a director, what advice would you give them at this stage and what they should be doing to inform their work based on your experience?
See as much theatre as you possibly can.
Yeah.
You really got to. You've just got to keep watching, seeing people's practice, get into a room and be an assistant. If at all, I know it's quite difficult. Make work. You've just got to be doing it. You've just got to be immersed in it. You've got to keep that practice going. It's really important to have ideas, to have a book filled with ideas, so that you never know who you're going to meet, so that you can present an idea, talk about an idea, have something bubbling all the time.
Mm-hmm. I think that's beautiful advice.
Hi, this is Annette Badland, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats.
We're going to take a quick break because it's time for dramatic news. Today's top stories. Jonathan Bailey and Alex Gammond have been announced as the final cast members for Marianne Elliott's forthcoming production of Stephen Sondheim's Company. Bailey will play Jamie, the character of Amy in the original production, with Gammond as Paul. The musical runs at the Gielgud Theatre from September 26th. The Show People podcast is deeply saddened to report dancer, director and choreographer Dame Gillian Lynne has passed away at the age of 92. Gillian Lynne, who is best known for choreographing Andrew Lloyd Webber's hit musicals Cats and The Phantom of the Opera, as well as over 60 other productions in the West End and on Broadway, passed away just a few days after a renaming ceremony at the former New London Theatre to the Gillian Lynne Theatre in her honour. Theatres across the West End dimmed their lights on the evening of the announcement of her death. Bonnie Langford is to join the cast of 42nd Street in the West End, which will close on January the 5th. Langford will quit EastEnders for the role and begins performances on September 3rd. She will continue until the show closes. Aladdin and the Lion King will open a new summer pop-up in Covent Garden for fans of Disney and the musicals. The pop-up will open on 25 Longacre every day from the 31st of July to the 26th of August and will offer interactive experiences and special events, such as giving visitors the chance to get up close and personal with the masks, puppets and costumes from the Lion King, and a special Cave of Wonders will also be created from Aladdin. There will be a variety of free events daily with the pop-up, including a treasure hunt, performances from cast members of the West End shows, puppetry demonstrations, and even stage makeup masterclasses. Access to events is available on a first-come, first-served basis. Arian Productions has managed to raise over £700 so far in their online GoFundMe campaign to raise £50,000 to invest in the company's events and productions. The campaign has been running just shy of 2 weeks. We are appealing to all of the Show People podcast listeners to please visit www.gofundme.com/support-Arian-Productions. Please give generously.
I'm Alistair Brammer, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats, a man with the hairdo of a children's TV presenter and the drinks cabinet of an elderly Broadway diva.
You finish your MA in directing. Tell me about what your very first professional job was out of Birkbeck.
It was running my own company. So it was Lightning Ensemble started as with writers, directors, and actors, and then myself and writer Sarah Wetherell took it on to lead it in terms of co-artistic directors.
So with the Lightning Ensemble, there were 4 particular pieces I noticed that you had directed. There was now I love the sound of this. You did 1908 Body and Soul, which was at the Cultural Olympiad, Henley Festival, and Jackson's Lane. Mm. So was that taking one production and totally readjusting it, of course, to 3 different venues?
It was taking strands of an idea. So in Henley, we took a sportsman that was connected to rowing, and we did an installation. An actor became this sportsman, and it was a promenade piece. Solo actor promenade piece. In Jackson's Lane, it was a reimagining of the 1908 Olympians. And so that was a piece of theatre, more recognisably as theatre. And that was working with circus artists to reimagine the 1908 Olympics. And the reason for the circus artists was really because the 1908 Olympians were really not athletes that we recognise today.
No.
They were bald-headed, pot-bellies, knobbly knees. And, for example, one guy went on holiday with a tennis racket and won gold. It just happened.
It's like Eddie the Eagle almost, isn't it?
Exactly that. It's very similar. So that was a great starting point. And then working with circus artists to reimagine what that could look like. So we had a pole vault and hooked up with a circus artist who worked on Chinese poles. So we made this Chinese pole move through the space, so it looked like he was doing a pole vault. And we had some roller skating aerialists, so they recreated ice skating. So that was that piece of work. And then in Woolwich, we worked with some young people there to recreate, again, a slightly immersive piece of work in the central space in Woolwich around elements of community and the Olympics.
And tell me, because I'm looking at the shows at the moment, the one that I'm absolutely fascinated by, again, directed by your good self, When the Fallen Sang. So tell me about this project, because I think it sounds delicious and really, really enticing. We were talking about it a little bit before we got on the microphones.
So St Giles and Fields is a very beautiful church in the middle of just quite close to Denmark Street, and in a space that's really going through quite a lot of gentrification, and it's changing massively, but it had more so then than it does now. It always felt to me like it was an island surrounded by busyness, buildings, movement, and this place of solace. You go in, it's very peaceful, it's quiet. Alan, who was the vicar then, had a very small congregation, and I remember going in there because I was really interested in the fact that St Giles was the patron saint of lost souls, and the history in that particular area is really interesting. It's where the plague started, and a series of lost souls have just kind of been attracted by this space. So the writer, Susie Armand, was also intrigued by this and did some research and looked at the history of it alongside the a contemporary version. So it was a fusion of the history and what was actually happening in 2013 as it was then in that area. And it was a promenade. So we moved through the space. It was informed very much by the location. Ran for 3 weeks. And we had some live music, singing in it. And it was, the space really informed the work. And it was great to be able to work in the building. We didn't go to a rehearsal space. We just worked in the building the entire time. So we were really lucky. Yeah.
And it must have been a very interesting, as a director, facilitating the relationship between the performers and the building whilst being in there and discovering every little detail that you notice every time you enter. I always say to an actor when they're terrified of a stage or whatever, every time you enter, notice something new about the building. And it's funny after a week how people start to go, oh, it feels like home. It's like, because you know that grate is just a little bit left, and you know that place, it's like a home. And again, I can go through so many things. There was also the Mayday. Yes. Now that looks like a really interesting venue. Where was it?
So the Mayday was created for a pub in East Leeds. The writer, Sarah Wetherell, who's the co-artistic director of Lightning Ensemble at that point, heard this fantastic story about a woman who ran a pub in East Leeds who became a hero, a kind of local hero. She looked after people. Older pensioners went in there with their pension book, and she filled in forms for them. And it was really interesting how she kind of saved. The idea was that she saved this local community. So we were intrigued. We went up there, visited this pub in East Leeds, and discovered this incredible space surrounded by many estates and a large expanse of green field. And Sarah really loved the film Johnny Guitar, and thought how great it would be to put a kind of Western in this pub. And that's exactly what happened.
Wow.
So we had a funeral. We dug a hole in the mound outside the pub, and we had a funeral procession, which actors in the community were involved in. And the kids from local estates knew the show so well that they would just follow the actors around, because they would make approaches from various different angles. And they would sing along. They did the work. It was incredible, actually. It was really great. And we were in contact with the people that were part of this show for quite a few years after.
Marie, listening to the way you talk about this work and the way you light up, I mean, again, this is the sad thing about a podcast is people can't see when people are remembering clearly very joyful memories. It seems community really is at the foundation of so much of what you do, whether that be in Clapham, trying to, making sure that everyone feels welcome coming into that space, to what an amazing relationship to build with a community within a pub and actors. I mean, blurring the lines between audience and performer, it sounds so unusual compared to some of the other conversations I've had here, where very much I do a show on stage and audiences peer in. You seem to be putting your arm around them almost.
I am really interested in people. I've been always really interested in people, and going back to the early days of my training as an actor, this idea of truth and Stanislavskian training and around that, and how about authenticity. And I think there are some really interesting connections between real space, real stories, and actors, people telling those stories, and an audience, all inhabiting that space. So that relationship and that dialogue that can come out of that is, you kind of you learn as an audience member, when you're in the middle of something, you learn different things about that play, because you have a different perspective, as opposed to the hierarchy of sitting in an auditorium and watching something, observing something. But when you are watching a play that's informed by the location and you're in that space, it's a more intense experience, I think. And you will notice things that other members of the audience won't notice. And I'm interested in playing with perspective, and how maybe sometimes, two people will notice an actor making an approach from quite some distance, and how they will look at that and what is real and what is not real. So when we go into a location, what often people have said is, I thought that bloke going across the street was part of the show. He wasn't. He was just walking across the street. So that kind of thing interests me quite a lot.
And I suppose as well, I mean, the most obvious example, a ghost story is so much more enticing when you're telling it in the graveyard. Or as a friend, bought me a pint recently in a pub and started telling me about Jack the Ripper, and then I realised what pub I was in, and just that delicious sense of being in a story.
Yeah.
So I suppose the big question to ask is, with all of that energy and hard work and passion and those wonderful memories of the Lightning Ensemble, what made you decide to leave to then go to Clapham Omnibus?
it wasn't a conscious decision. It's one of those things that happen, that this job literally fell in my lap. And I just thought, this is an amazing building. I'm really interested in it. It has no audience, so is it possible for me to help build an audience and a program and an infrastructure? So it was the challenge. And I just literally have no time to put into Lightning Ensemble, so I had to just park that down the road somewhat and take my directing work into the building.
And you've been very good as well, because again, it can be very easy for some artistic directors to turn their theatres into a sort of their play theatre. But you've been working with so many different directors. Is that important to you? And also, as an older woman now compared to when you were training, do you find yourself really trying to do more to try and not attack the patriarchy, but create some kind of equity, getting women directors in your theatre?
Yeah, it's really, really important. And writers.
Yeah.
And any person that's not represented, we've got to address that. And we can only address it by doing it. So we need to have our theatres populated with the community that is outside our theatres. And we just got to do that and make opportunities for that, and for those people to make work. So yeah, and also just the sheer workload means that I've concentrated on getting the infrastructure and the building working and operating, because to go into a rehearsal space, for 3 weeks, you've got to have all your 100% attention in that room. I directed Spring Offensive and really enjoyed that experience. It was a new piece of writing, and also I'll be directing Orlando next year. But I need the time to be able to get everything in place, and keep that development going, keep those relationships.
There can
building.
be nothing worse as well. I mean, I have to in rehearsal turn my phone off. Yeah. But when you run a company, you do that deadly thing at lunch and turn your phone on, and you see the little red dot of emails turning from 10s to 20s to hundreds, and you think, and it can be. People may laugh at it, but it can be really soul-destroying when you've got your company to look after, your partner to look after, the cats, all this, that, and the other. And you start thinking, am I being selfish being in this rehearsal room, and sort of see the cards fall down.
Hello, my dears. You have the ineffable and probably undeserved pleasure of listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats. This is Stephen Fry wishing you a wonderful listen. Thank you.
Well, it's time for the Show People podcast platform, the part of the show where we like to give a little airtime to some new writing. And today we're going to hear a song from a new musical called Perfectly Ordinary, with music by Joe Wilson and lyrics by Matthew Rankin. Matthew is a current musical theatre student at the Guildford School of Acting who has recently turned his hand to writing, and Joe is a London-based musical director who has even worked with the one and only Kristen Chenoweth. He is about to embark on a master's degree in conducting after teaching at Arts Ed for the last 2 years. Now, their show, Perfectly Ordinary, addresses the nation's response to mental health. Set on a psychiatric ward, we follow 6 patients and their nurses as we learn about their lives, their illnesses, and what their futures hold. With a blend of comedy, tragedy, and hopefulness, the show examines what it means to be normal. The song we're about to hear comes towards the end of the show, when the girl returns to the hospital after leaving to live in the outside world. Inside, she has always been seen as a magical being who brings hope to those around her, but outside, that is far from the truth. The demo recording we're about to hear features Emily Lane, who was part of the 2017 workshop cast. Here is In Between from Perfectly Ordinary.
I fear no dragons, I know them here. With a wave of my wand, they will all disappear. The dragons are strange and far too real. I don't know how to cope with them or what it is I feel. The spells I cast in here make me vanish, I can hide. My magic is a blessing, and I know inside I'm magical, wonderful, a sight to be seen. Out there, I'm a monster. Is there something It's not what I'd expected to be free, running wild. I missed feeling protected, never felt more like a child. My powers quickly vanished, but it didn't leave me sane. It left a frightened little girl who has to hide again. But the spells I cast in here make me feel like I'm alive, like I might have some meaning and a reason to survive. Outside of those locked doors, I'm helpless as I've always been. Do you think that I could maybe find something in between? Not to be Harry Potter, I'm happy with Ron. I'm afraid of the outside, but I need to move on to get past the dementors that trap me in here, to give up these delusions and finally see clear. The Watchers is the wizard, that's all guaranteed. But if I'm not a wizard, will someone choose me? Me as a person who needs their own mind. Me as a someone who matters. I'm ready to breathe and stop feeling confined. Say goodbye to this world as it shatters. I must face the dragons out there in the end. Then finally I'll be me, no more need to pretend. And with your help I know I'll do things I'll never dream. Maybe. No, not maybe. This I have foreseen. I'm ready now. I know I'll find something in between.
Wonderful. And if you'd like to find out more about Matthew and Joe's work, you can follow them on Facebook or on Twitter at Ordinary Musical. Have you got a song or a short scene that you'd like me to play on the Show People podcast? Well, please do get in touch. We're really passionate about new writing. Just email info@arian-productions.com.
This is casting director Annie Rowe, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats. I hope you've learned your sides.
So it's very, very easy when you've been an artistic director of two companies to just talk about those two companies. What's been the piece in your career that you've perhaps discovered the most about yourself in creating?
I directed The Crucible, Queen's Hornchurch, and that piece of work, I love Miller, and that piece of work was really stayed with me for quite some time, and it was with the young company, and we spoke a lot about identity, and because of John Proctor, obviously, and about truth and lies, and there was something really powerful about his final speech. Always gets me, and about taking a young company through that process and the research around it, and seeing how it related so strongly to a life, some experiences that they had, but also what's happening now. And it was really inspirational to be reminded of those words and of that play. And actually, we've got so much work to do. We have so much work to do. And theatre is an amazing space to be able to create platforms to help people engage in different ways, get different perspectives. And that play really stayed with me, really reminded me about truth, my own truth, how important that is.
And also, what's rather lovely, and I know being associated with a theatre that was formerly a library and Classics Reimagined, there's also some really lovely national tours in your CV, such as Wind in the Willows, for example, and Pride and Prejudice, two wonderful classics. Were classics important to you as a young woman? I
bypassed the classics as a kid. I really did. I really read them as after post school. Actually, that's when I became really interested, and so therefore, reading them as an adult and particularly in directing them was really interesting and exciting. So it wasn't informed from being a child reading them. It was definitely reading them as an adult and getting and just seeing, how resonant they are. That was the thing that always amazed me. It's like, oh my God, she's dealing with that in Pride and Prejudice. I get that. I understand that. And working with actors and there were just so many conversations around, okay, so that was written, but actually look at how relevant it is now. And that's the thing that kind of interests me a lot. It's about, these are universal stories, essentially. And universal truths. Yeah. That seems to be a really recurring theme with you. There's a wonderful title, which I want to ask about, which I know nothing about. What was Alice in the Walled Garden? Right, that was Alice in Wonderland. And it was in a walled garden. No, you're joking. You controversial thing, you. In Brockwell Park, there's a beautiful walled garden. And that was scenes from Alice in Wonderland. And 16 Feet Productions, that was the company. And that was really great fun, a fantastic summer of lots of sunburnt actors and myself rehearsing in a walled garden with hay fever. And now that's an immersive production. Yeah, it was great, and it's a very, very beautiful garden. And the audience would promenade to different places in the garden, and they'd have see a scene essentially, and they would follow Alice through that journey. Oh, that sounds absolutely magical. I want to go now, just with less hay fever.
Hello, this is Kim Ismay, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats, and I hope you're having a wickedly interesting time.
So we've spoken so much about immersive productions. Now I'm going to give you the most immersive situation you can imagine. I'm going to strand you on tour in Whitley Bay in some very gloomy digs. I want to know what you need to survive. Now, you do get a copy of the complete works of Shakespeare and a religious text of any choice that you may, decide to read or use as a doorstop. I honestly don't mind. But I want to know what your favourite album, film, TV series, book, play, musical and luxury item will be. So let's start with the album. What would you need to get you through those dark days?
Tales of Us, Goldfrapp.
I didn't expect you to say Goldfrapp. And what is it about Goldfrapp? What is it about the work that attracts you?
I just love her lyrics, and I saw her recently at Greenwich, I think it was last year, maybe the year before, and as a performer, she's incredible. I just love the music.
I think you should write to her and see if she'll do a little sort of very, very select performance at the Omnibus Theatre for you and see if she might, try and support you.
I would love that.
We'll tweet her. We'll say, make sure you check out this episode. And equally as hard, what would be the film?
Lars von Trier's Melancholia. Yeah, I don't get to see films as often as I do, but I really love it just simply because it's complete escape. It's totally. I'm not there going, I'm not sure about that bit or about the staging or I just love it. Just sit in a cinema and away. I think what's really interesting, those images in that film has really stayed with me a lot in a long time. Those images stayed with me a long time.
And what would be, now this is a new one, thanks to Cassie Compton, who was on the show last week. What would be your TV series box set?
Handmaid's Tale.
Oh, isn't it absolutely breathtaking?
I love it.
It's one of the best things on television in a very long time.
I mean, she's just a fantastic writer. She's just amazing. So, and I think that this is, the first series was really had the spirit of it, and I just think it's beautifully filmed. Aesthetically, it's gorgeous to look at.
And equally, it's got that chill to it, hasn't
Yeah.
it? Do you know what I mean? Like the moment you notice anything slightly warm in the shot, you're immediately drawn to it.
Yeah.
It's so clever. And what would be the book you would take with you? Can't take The Handmaid's Tale as well, because that would be just the most depressing time in Whitley Bay.
I know. I'm just having to think about that too. I have read Orlando recently because of directing it next year, and I would take that with me so that I could reread it. I love it.
What is the story of Orlando? Because I don't think for listeners who don't know.
Oh, it's the journey. It's a journey of a transformation. Orlando changes from male to female. Virginia Woolf's Orlando.
Gosh, and when was it released? It's sort of 1928.
Yes.
What would be the play?
Right. Okay.
And you've already got the complete works of William Shakespeare, so
Okay.
that's on the shelf.
Okay. I love Miller.
Yeah.
I really do. So I would take The Crucible with me.
It's a good play to take. It's a very good play to take. And I think I might be able to guess the answer to this one, or at least I hope I can, based on what we were saying earlier. What would be the musical?
It wouldn't be that one.
Would it not?
No, it wouldn't be. It would be Into the Woods.
Oh, it's just wonderful. It is, yeah. That's what you need to do soon.
Yeah.
Can we have a nice Sondheim musical at the Omnibus Theatre?
Yeah.
I am available. And lastly, luxury item.
I really like Lindt chocolate.
My other half's birthday, the other day, I made him a Lindt chocolate birthday cake. He was a very happy bunny.
Yeah, I can imagine. I would be.
So actors, if you are going to drop a CV in it, there's a higher chance that it will be read if you send in some Lindt chocolate as well.
Yeah.
This is West End producer, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with the sumptuous, the savoury, and the slightly sugary Andrew Keats, dear.
I'm going to ask you some of the most obscure, random, and bizarre questions that I can possibly ask. You have 5 minutes to answer, and you are allowed 3 passes, so use them wisely. Let's play Funny 5 Minutes. Marie McCarthy, what is your worst habit?
Being fidgety.
What is your favourite theatre other than the Omnibus Theatre?
Almeida.
What happened in the last dream you had?
I haven't remembered a dream ever since I've been at Omnibus.
Really?
So I'm really tired all the
That
time.
means you've never slept. If you could have a superpower, what would it be?
Invisible.
Cats or dogs?
Cats.
That's the right answer. What is your favourite season?
Spring.
Spring. If you're an animal, what would you be?
Eagle.
Eagle. If you could choose your last meal, what would it be?
Mackerel salad.
Mackerel salad.
Yeah.
So Lindt chocolate and mackerel salad.
Yeah.
That's just a night out. Have you ever been abducted by aliens?
No.
Nope, never happened. Do you believe in ghosts?
Yes.
Have you ever seen a ghost?
Yes.
What happened?
I was a bit scared and I ran away.
Wasn't at the Omnibus.
No, somewhere else.
Does the Omnibus have ghosts?
No, no ghosts.
Oh. If you were to order a pizza, what would it be?
Oh, vegetarian.
If you could jump into a swimming pool filled with something, what would it be?
Popcorn.
Popcorn. Soft landing. And if you had the chance, would you ever swim with sharks?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
You're mad.
Yes.
You're absolutely
Yes.
mad. What do you think the best Disney film is ever made?
Finding Nemo.
Finding Nemo. Who was your teenage crush?
Oh God! I really liked Olivia Newton-John.
It was the do. Star Trek or Star Wars?
Star Trek.
Star Trek is the best. If someone were to play you in a movie of your life, who would it be?
Susan Sarandon.
Oh, that wasn't going to be Olivia Newton-John, let's be honest. Stephen Sondheim or Andrew Lloyd Webber?
Sondheim.
How do you like your eggs in the morning?
Fried.
Are you an early riser or a night owl?
Early riser.
From the sound of things, it's early riser and night owl.
Yes, it's true.
What was your favourite children's show growing up?
On telly?
On telly.
Lost in Space.
Oh, danger, Will Robinson, danger. Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
The one.
One, because
Yes.
just for a point of focus.
Yeah.
And it would soon then be appearing at the Omnibus,
Yes.
at the engine room. Who is the most famous person you've ever met?
Judi Dench.
What is the most delicious thing you can cook?
I'm really rubbish at cooking.
Are you?
Yeah, really bad.
But if it's your go-to, sort of, it's your turn in the kitchen, what would it be?
Jacket potato. And tuna.
Have you ever been arrested?
No.
Good. How many pairs of shoes do you own? 10. If you could visit any point in history, where would it be and why?
I would love to go back to the kind of 14th, 15th century.
Well, sadly, that noise tells me that is the end of the show. So before we finish, I just need to squeeze in a few parish notices. Thank you to Matthew Rankham and Joe Wilson for sending in a song from Perfectly Ordinary. But ladles and jelly spoons, please let's hear it for the one, the only, Marie McCarthy. Thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Thank you.
How can people keep up to date with all that Omnibus Theatre is up to?
Website, omnibus-clapham.org.
And Twitter?
Is at omnibus_theatre.
And you've obviously got your Facebook page as well, which is...
At Omnibus Theatre.
And are you on Twitter as well?
Yes, I am.
What's your...
Marie McCarthy AD.
So make sure you give Marie a nice follow. And finally, if you are interested in any of the projects that we have mentioned on the show at Omnibus Theatre, either the Engine Room or any of their upcoming productions, all of the details will be in the show notes. So just visit those and you'll find all the links there. Don't forget, you can also follow me on Twitter at Andrew Keats. Follow the show at ShowPeopleUK. Use hashtag ShowPeoplePodcast. You can send me an email to info@arian-productions.com or like the Show People Facebook page at facebook.com/ShowPeoplePodcast. This podcast is produced by Arian Productions Limited, dedicated to giving opportunities to theatre makers. We need your help. I set up a fundraising challenge to raise £50,000 to totally redevelop Arian Productions to enable us to make more productions, masterclasses and free resources for actors. Please go to www.gofundme.com/support-Arian-Productions. Anything you can give to our fundraiser will really, really make a difference. Please, please, please do go and visit. Also, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and support the show. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, show people, donate, and just be better. There's a wonderful title, which I want to ask about, which I know nothing about. What was Alice in the Walled Garden?
Right, that was Alice in Wonderland, and it was in a walled garden.